called Boroondara, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and they are the custodians and the traditional owners of the land. They've been here for tens of thousands of years, nurturing the land. They've got a strong continuing spiritual connection to the land, and unfortunately the land which we live on has never been ceded by them. I also would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners, the elders, past, present and future, and any other Aboriginal people who may be here tonight. And particularly I'd like to pay my respects to Jill, who's come along especially. I'll just spare my glasses. This is NAIDOC Week, and this year's theme is Because of Her We Can. And in the case of Jill Gallagher, the statement could not be more appropriate. A proud Boroondara woman, Jill is an inspirational Victorian Aboriginal leader who has been a powerful advocate for self-determination and outcomes on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginal community. Professor of Law Megan Davis describes Jill in the latest monthly magazine as one of the most impressive Aboriginal leaders she has ever encountered. Jill's achievements are remarkable and led to her being awarded the Order of Australia for her strong and effective leadership in Aboriginal health, and also being inducted to the Victorian Honour Roll of Women and the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll. In December last year, Jill was appointed Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner. It is my privilege to introduce Jill Gallagher to speak to us tonight. Following her talk, there will be a Q&A session, and after that, you are invited to stay for supper. The Boroondara Reconciliation Network has a table with information about its activities, and people interested in finding out about the BRE are invited to give their names and contact details. Also, I would just like to thank the parish of Our Lady of Good Counsel, and particularly John Hassett from the Social Justice Group, who kindly offered to host this meeting. Unfortunately, John can't be here tonight due to ill health, and we wish him a swift recovery. We will be taking some photographs during the evening, so if anyone here doesn't wish their photograph to be taken, please let us know, and we'll make sure that you aren't included. Well, without any further ado, I'll hand over to Jill.
Thank you very much for that awesome introduction. Sometimes I get a little bit changed. But before I begin, can I say I'd like to acknowledge that I am an Aboriginal, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. But I'd also like to pay my respects to you. It's great to see people come out on a cold night to listen to me talk about truth. So that sends a very strong message to me, and I thank you very much for that. Whether you agree with it or not, I still thank you for that. Okay. As introduced, I am a proud Aboriginal woman from Boroondara country, which is Western Victoria. My mum came from a little mission down near Portland, Lake Honda, and also down near Warrnambool, the Framingham Aboriginal Mission. That's where my people come from. My father was Irish. He came from Ireland, and he was born here in Australia, but didn't know much about his Irish heritage. But he got killed when I was about 6 months old, so I didn't learn much about my Irish heritage. I learned a lot and lived in the Victorian Aboriginal communities. So I was raised Aboriginal by my mum. We all know that this country, and in this case this state, it was occupied prior to colonisation. That's not a myth, we know that's a fact. That there were Aboriginal people that actually lived here that actually had their children here, that actually farmed the land, cultivated the land. And we've been here for such a long time. And some people don't know that. You know, my ancestors witnessed volcanoes erupting in Western Victoria, Tower Hill, and that was 30-odd thousand years ago. My ancestors walked from Tasmania to the mainland because there was a land bridge all those years ago. My ancestors hunted megafauna with stone tools and spears, and they died out something like 45,000 years ago. So Aboriginal people have been here for a long time, and they survived the Ice Age and the extinction of megafauna. They survived all that. But then colonisation happened. We almost didn't survive that. There were atrocities committed in the name of settlements. There were crimes against humanity committed in this country and in Victoria. There's no dispute about that. It's in the history books, but it's not taught. We were back then a very proud, strong in culture and strong in community people. But colonisation had a humongous impact, and we still feel those impacts today. All you've got to do is look at the over-representation of Aboriginal people in the justice system. All you've got to look at is Australia has the highest rates in the world of children being taken away from their families. That's a fact. We had the highest rates in the world. We had other social issues. We have drug and alcohol issues like any other community. So the impact that colonisation had on our communities, it was brutal. And we still feel the effects today. And we're still trying to pick up those pieces. So that's just a little bit of history about colonisation and how it impacted on us as a people. And prior to settlement, our people knew how to farm the land. They knew how to make sure that we did fire farming, fish farming. Down where I came from, we had an extensive eel and fish trap systems that was utilised traditionally by Boroondara people for thousands and thousands of years. And those systems are still down there on the landscape. So it's important for all Victorians to fully understand what you've got in your backyard. You've got the oldest living culture in the world in your backyard. But how many of us value that? How many of us that actually know about what happened prior to contact? How many of us know that rich culture? And how many of us teach our kids? It's not even taught in school. I was talking to some people before I actually started, and they were talking about some Aboriginal elders that they knew. People like Auntie Marge Tucker, Mrs Briggs, both Yorta Yorta elders, William Cooper. You know, there's some leading Aboriginal leaders of the past that paved the way for us as Aboriginal people to where we are today. But there is unfinished business. For many years, Aboriginal people in Australia have had broken promises after broken promises after broken promises. For many years, we as Aboriginal people have called for treaties in this country with the first people of this country. The very first treaty ever negotiated in this country was the Batman tree. Batman. Someone corrected me on that one. Not Batman, no, it's Batman. The Batman tree. That was negotiated back in 1835. And that consisted of something like, I think it was 162,000 acres of land for some stone tools, a couple of blankets, and some other trinkets. Now, that was annulled a couple of months after it was actually signed, but it was annulled, and that was a good thing, by the way, because they got a good deal, and the Aboriginal community got taken. Okay, but what that said to the rest of the country, and what it said to us, even back in 1835, the authorities there recognised there was a sovereign people in this country before settlement. So it was not the notion of terra nullius back in 1835 was there, but it took a high court to make that ruling for people to fully understand it or believe it. Now in Australia there was never a declared war when settlement started. Never a declared war. It's the same in South Africa. There was never a declared war in South Africa. And so, but when apartheid was abolished in South Africa, there were crimes against humanity that were committed in that country. But no one could be held accountable for war crimes because there was no declared war. And it's the same here. What we're saying, what should happen, is truth-telling hearings. We can't continue to sweep the true history of this country under the carpet. We can't continue to do that. We have to make the world aware of those crimes against humanity. But it's not about making my next door neighbour feel guilty or Darren Hinch feel guilty or what's the other lad who runs that radio program? He's a bit of a shock jock.
John Slade.
No, John Slade's pretty good actually. He's quite supportive.
Ray Hadley. Andrew Bolt.
That's him. Andrew Bolt. Yeah. So, I mean, people need to fully understand and learn about what did happen. And it's really important that we all do that. And it's not about making the Andrew Bolts feel guilty or the Fred Greens feel guilty or your next door neighbours feel guilty. It's not about that. It's about acknowledging what happened to our people. And it's not about holding anyone accountable for it. It's definitely not about that. And no one should feel guilty for what happened. But what we've got to be sure that we don't do, we don't continue to be bystanders and allow for the history of this country to be swept under the carpet. We can't allow that no more. So when, back in February 2016, the state government, the Andrews government, they've got a policy on self-determination, but they really don't know what that means. So they held a forum in Northcote at the Aborigines Advancement League. And at that forum, the state government reps that were there said to the Aboriginal people that turned up to that forum, what does self-determination mean to you as Aboriginal people? And the community that were there overwhelmingly again said, if you want to know what true self-determination for us is, then put treaties on the table. So again, we had another call for treaties, but from the state government, not from the Commonwealth government. What was different about this time, the state government said, let's explore what that could look like. Not let's have a treaty, but let's explore that. And that's a good thing. I'm not knocking it, I reckon it's a great thing. So 2 years ago, and because of the devastation that I spoke about earlier, about how it's impacted on our cultures, on our traditional owner groups, on our clan-based communities, our culture, our lives, It's not as easy as said than done to say, well, who is the government going to negotiate with? Is it just going to be Jill Gallagher? No. Is it going to be local treaties? Is it going to be a statewide treaty? Is it going to be both? And who can negotiate treaties? Is it the Aboriginal person that lives in Fitzroy that originally comes from WA? Or is it what we call traditional owners? So all those answers, all those questions needed to be answered, and we didn't have the answers. So 2 years of work has taken place. So a working group was established, and that working group's role was to do a couple of things. It was to go out and engage with the Aboriginal community and ask the community, how do we do this? How do we start negotiating treaties? And then their other role was to work with government to develop a bill, a piece of legislation, and also set up the Treaty Advancement Commission, so my role. Now, I was part of that treaty working group, and I took up this position in February this year. So I had to resign from the working group. The working group's still there, by the way, trying to tell me what to do, but I won't let them know. So what happened is the commission's tick, we've got that up and running. And I'll tell you a little bit about my role in a minute. The bill was introduced in Parliament a couple of months ago, I think. Yeah. It got through the lower house, no problem. And then just a couple of weeks ago it went through the upper house. And what the government needed for that bill to get through was the Greens on side, and I think it was 2 independents. Yeah. Yep, 2 independents. Thank you, Leanne. And that went through. The Greens had some amendments. They strengthened certain sections of the bill, which I thought was quite good. The government accepted that. The government didn't accept all their amendments, but it was enough. So that bill is now an act of Parliament. And what the bill does, what that act does, it actually commits a government to continue to talk to a representative body. And I'll talk a bit about that rep body in a minute. It also commits the government to setting up the treaty authority, which is not me. And it also sets up a self-determination fund. And that fund, the role of that fund, we don't know what's in the fund yet, but the role of that fund is to actually support the Aboriginal communities to have an equal voice around the negotiating table, whatever form that may take. So that's what the bill does, and that's an act of Parliament. We do have elections coming up in November. We know the opposition do not support treaties, and the opposition leader has come out publicly now and basically said if they get in November, there'll be no talk of treaty in the state of Victoria. So they'll squash it, and that happened just recently in South Australia too, by the way. South Australian government did the same thing, even though that mob over there, they were doing different to what we were doing in relation to treaties. They were actually going straight into negotiating treaties. We've got a lot of work to do before we even get to the space of negotiating treaties. So that's a challenge for us. But if we do get a change of government, what's going to happen? Now, if we do get a change of government, they can't get rid of that act easily. It'll take some good politicking to do that. So that's one safeguard that we managed to get in before the election happened. Okay. And there will be a representative body regardless. The government can't take that office. Okay. But what they can do, make it difficult for us and not give us any funding. But that's okay. We're used to dealing with that. So a little bit about my role. My role is not to negotiate treaties. My role is to set up a mechanism so government can talk to. Because at this stage they don't know who to talk to. So my role is to set up what we call an Aboriginal representative body. And that body will be fully elected. There'll be a democratic process that I have to set up also. We'll have our own electoral boundaries and we'll have our own elections. We've got nothing to do with mainstream elections. It'll be all separate and the representative body will own that process. So that's my role, and I've got to do that hopefully by July 2019. It's a big ask. But it's doable because for the past 2 years we've already asked community about how this design could look like, how it could look like in a modern world, not in a world where it wasn't touched by colonisation. We don't have that no more, so we have to look at how we can set up a mechanism that's going to be a democratic elections, and also how can I, as the Treaty Commissioner, Advancement Commissioner, embed culture in that structure. One of the recipes that the community has said we should look at is this body will be accompanied by guarantee. That's going to be the legal framework that we're looking at to explore, because that way government don't have control over it. If it's a statutory authority, government still have control over statutory authorities and make appointments to it. So we want community to elect their own representatives. My role is to also continue to talk to people about treaties. So I'm doing a lot of this sort of gigs, and I'm also going out on what I'm calling treaty road trips. I leave Sunday for our third treaty road show, where I'll be travelling around Victoria, mainly, well, we're going to
London and Hume.
London and Hume, thank you again. We've done Barwon South West, and we've done Ballarat, Horsham, Mildura, Robinvale and Swan Hill, and also Budja, which is in Garryworth, the Grampians. So next is the London Hume, and then down to Gunai country. Someone was talking to me about Gunai country. Then we go down there towards the end of August and speak to the communities down there about treaties, about the rep body, and also about aspirations. Now, I'm going to finish in a minute so you can ask heaps of questions, but what I wanted to probably just talk a little bit about is some people ask me a question, well, what's treaty going to do for us as Aboriginal people? So what are we going to achieve out of this? Now, I don't know the full answers to that, but all I know is that treaties can empower us as a peoples. Treaties can give us a sense of hope for us as a peoples. A treaty can address truth-telling for us as a people. And that truth-telling is, I believe, the crucial part. A treaty or treaties needs to look at reparation, and it also needs to look at land. But it's not private land we're talking about here, so I just need to say that. Your house or your farms or your backyard is safe. Okay. Because that's not on the table. So I just needed to highlight that, because some people still have those fears. But that's not where we're coming from. And treaties can also, that empowerment is so crucial to the health and well-being of Aboriginal communities. My mother, I spoke a little bit earlier about my mum. My mum is 92 this year. Now, she has exceeded all the odds out there. I mean, the life expectancy of Aboriginal women is about 10 years earlier than anyone else. So we die a lot earlier than non-Aboriginal people. And she has reached 92. I don't know the secret. She reckons it's all the rabbits when she lived on the mission. There was no, what do you call all that stuff that they put in food nowadays? That's it. She reckons it was all the rabbits and all the veggies that they grew. So she's probably right, I don't know, but yeah. So she's lived to, but not a lot of Aboriginal people live to that age. A lot of our people are very lucky if we even make it to, retirement age. And that's a big issue for us, our elders. But I see the trauma that people like my mum has suffered. I never lived on a mission. I don't know what it's like to live on a mission, and I actually don't want to. I never went without food. I didn't have my kids taken away from me. I wasn't told by government where I had to live, or where I had to go and work, or whether I could buy a house or not. But she was. And she was denied an education. And she was denied because she's black. She was denied having her children with her because she was black. So, the point that I'm making there, my mum is still alive today. You know what? She has no animosity. None whatsoever, not a mean bone in her body. And a lot of Aboriginal people are like that. And that's why I believe treaties are the right thing to do. I'm done, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jill, for that inspiring. We shall have formal thanks later, but we're now going straight to the Q&A. Judy, up the back there, has the roving microphone. So put up your hands, Judy will come to you and you may ask your questions. Over here. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you for that, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit late in turning up. I just have one question. Are there not some novel treaties which can be borrowed from other First Nations people around the world to try and short-circuit this process, which is most definitely going to be incredibly tortuous, the legalistic affair, which many will probably try and derail?
Yes, there is. I'm currently looking closely at the British Columbia models in Canada. They've negotiated, they negotiated their first treaties over 100 years ago, but they've also negotiated modern day treaties. They went through the same challenges that we're going to have to go through. They've now signed off on all their treaties, but not all. Not all. They call themselves bands over there. Not all bands signed up to the treaty. I think out of the 6 bands under the British Columbia treaties, only 5 of them signed up. Yeah, from memory. I don't know what the issue was. There's community politics that we've also got to deal with. You know, there's Aboriginal people who've been dispossessed. Their clans no longer exist. And there's a lot of hurt there. So we've also got to deal with that. And so some people have a utopian view of what a treaty can do for us as a community. But we've got to look at it from a modern day practical point of view also. We can't undo the past. We can't live in the past. But for us, the past lives in us. And I think the only way we can do this is by achieving treaties. But to answer your question, we are looking at the overseas models and trying to take the best from them.
Hold on to that. Next question. Right here. You had your reference. Sorry, Judy. Oh, where we go. Right here.
Thank you, Jill. Is this on?
Yes, you need to hold it close.
This is a very practical question. But I just wondered, when you go on these road trips, which sound a wonderful idea, and obviously a huge commitment from you, but to whom do you speak? What sort of groups?
I speak to mainly Aboriginal people, people who live in the communities, but I also try to reach out to non-Aboriginal community. Our first road trip, we weren't very successful at that. We reached out to the Aboriginal community, okay, because we all know one another, but my reach to the non-Aboriginal community is not good. So that's when we invited Reconciliation Victoria to help us with that. Because they've got the reach, you know, they've got the networks, I don't. So I want to talk to as many people as I can.
And
You know.
schools?
Look, I don't know, I don't, I'm not going in. Yeah, it's too early for that. I think once the rep body's established, that's where the, you know, not real engagement, but more in-depth engagement, maybe in the schools. I'm trying to get into the prisons, to talk to Aboriginal people in prisons, because just because they're in prison, they still have a right to know what's going on. And when we have, when we're ready to implement the election process, prisoners will also be included in that.
Thank you.
Thanks. This question, there's some more people along here. Alan?
I might be a bit early in asking this question, but do you have a gut feel as to whether we'll end up with 36, 38 treaties or one treaty?
I think there should be, I believe there is statewide, there should be a statewide treaty, but also there should be local treaties. And let me explain what I mean by that. Statewide treaty, so as a collective, there's some benefits we can get as a collective of the whole Aboriginal community and the non-Aboriginal community. So some of those asks could be along the lines, a percentage of seats for Aboriginal people. Yes, very much so. It is. I mean, I have a mandate that I was appointed by the governor, not by the minister. So I have a mandate to deliver a fully elected Aboriginal representative body that's going to work. Okay. So those are challenges. We get a fair bit of pushback from our own communities. We get but at the same token, we get a fair bit of, how come it's taken so long, Jill? You know, we've got elders dying at 50. Are there any quick wins we can get? And yet you've got some people saying, no, you've got to have that utopian view. You know, we want every clan represented on this representative body. And we also want to make well-informed decisions so we get the best out of what we can get. But that's not going to happen. Because you've got to be practical at the same time. I think at some stage, we as a people have to really have faith that the leaders we put up will do right by us. And the unions have been very supportive in every area, including the Uluru Statement.
Next question?
Oh, there's one up the back.
Sorry. Sorry, Mark. Good to see you.
Thanks, Jill. That's been a fantastic talk. What I'm really interested in is the idea of the truth-telling, because I know how powerful stories can be. And I'd like to hear what you're thinking at the moment about how that truth-telling will happen and how you actually get people to listen to the truth-telling.
I don't really have a lot of thinking in that space about truth-telling. I've been looking at what happened in South Africa when apartheid was abolished. But that would have to be, I mean, this is what we've got to remember, this is a state-based treaty. It's not a Commonwealth treaty. It is not a Commonwealth treaty. So truth-telling would be best at the Commonwealth level, because what you want to be able to do is, and what happened in South Africa was that the whole world got to hear about what happened to South Africans. You know, and that was part of the healing process. So, but in Victoria, if it's a state-based treaty, I don't know how that would work. That's something that the representative body would have to explore further about how we actually do it, because it does need to happen. Yeah.
We've been very good at stopping people listening to the stories, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, that's society. Yeah. Very much so. I think we've got one on the back there.
Yeah, please.
Do you see reconciliation groups like ours playing a role in some way?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, as earlier when I spoke about how my reach to non-Aboriginal people wasn't all that good, Reconciliation Victoria plays a very important role, and all the groups that sit under that. I mean, when we went to Geelong, we had the reconciliation group up there. They actually given themselves a name. It's quite a good, catchy name. It's called One Fire. And they're a group of non-Aboriginal people that come together and talk about how they can support the advancement of whatever. In this case, they had a chat with me about how they could support the advancement of treaties in Victoria. Yes, so I see the reconciliation groups all around the state playing a very important role. And in future, across the country. Because Reconciliation Australia are also looking at how they can be more supportive in relation to treaties in Victoria. Now, how you can get involved and how you make a difference is, I mean, I think what I'm telling people at this stage, I don't have a lot to offer, but what I'm saying is keep yourself involved. We have a website, the Treaty Advancement Commission. We have a website, we have a Facebook page. I don't know whether you all do Facebook. No, okay. We have a mailing list up the back. If you don't do Facebook or social media, we have a mailing list. We'll send you stuff if you want to leave your address or a contact detail. We'll keep you updated. The more well-informed you are, it's better for us. I also think it's important to, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your neighbours, or your school groups, or your, what other groups it may be, your church groups. I think it's important that more people that support it and don't fear it, that's going to be better for us in the long run. So it's about keeping yourself informed. The government try to scrap us, tell them what you think. Yeah, tell them what you think. Exactly right, because we're less than 2% of the population, and our vote don't count. But the majority of the population's vote counts, and that's how you're going to sway political will, so to speak.
Andre, there it is. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks very much, Jill. That was been a really,
Just hold it a bit closer.
really important message you're giving us and so clearly put. One of the issues that I've heard from your people is how do we deal with the people who come from Western Australia or the Northern Territory or wherever. It's a very mixed bunch here, and some people are those ones that you will have heard this anyway. Yeah.
That has been a humongous conversation in our communities. The majority of Aboriginal people in Victoria believe when it comes to actually negotiating treaties, it has to be traditional owners. Traditional owners who have cultural connection to country that we now know as Victoria. It has to be. You can't do it any other way. But what they have also said, anything that falls out of treaties, every blackfella that lives in Victoria should benefit from. In relation to the elections, what the community have provided advice to me is that only traditional owners can stand to run on this representative body, but all Aboriginal people that live within Victorian borders can vote, whether you're traditionally from here or not. So that's allowing some role in that, but it's also allowing whatever comes out of a treaty that all blackfellas that live in Victoria will benefit from, not just for traditional owners. I think that's a really good way forward in that respect. Yeah.
Do they?
Do they who?
Well, the ones that aren't.
The ones that aren't from here.
Yeah.
You know what, I don't know. I've never asked them. But it's like me trying to go up to Cape York or up to Tiwi Island. Thank you for me to try and talk on their country. It's not culturally appropriate, you can't do it. I'd soon get speared or thrown out of town or whatever. Yeah, you can't do it. And every black fella should know that.
Jill, in terms of fixing the electoral boundaries in advance of the elections, is there any advantage in using the boundaries that exist already for RAPs, the registered Aboriginal parties?
We looked at that, Gary. We looked at that in detail, but not all of Victoria is covered by a registered Aboriginal party or a traditional owner settlement act. There's still big gaps. So what do we do in those areas? And the other thing with that, because we want to make sure that this is as fair as possible. You've got some traditional owner groups that are humongous in size and in population. And then you've got some little traditional owner groups who are not so big in size and don't have a big population. So their vote's really not going to count against the big ones. So we have to do it also along the way as one of the recommendations out of the Aboriginal Community Assembly report was that we have to look at, what was it? Per 1,700 per head of population of Aboriginal people, there will be one delegate. So that will even it out, but it's we still need to have boundaries, electoral boundaries, because but I don't know whether we can we looked at it, but it's going to be very hard still, Gary. It's going to create a lot of issues around fair and even and being even and transparent and open.
You talked about your the things that you thought were important to come out of a treaty. You mentioned things like to give hope, truth-telling, reparation and land. I know it's very early days, but is there any feeling amongst the people that you've been speaking to that there is one of those that is the most important?
Very good. No, I haven't actually. I haven't put it that way because we're not at that level. We're not down to actually negotiating a treaty framework. Those sorts of questions will be asked in those negotiations. Yeah. But it's a good question because I haven't really thought about that. Yeah.
I don't think I need the mic. So my name is Dilnaz and I'm actually from a culturally and linguistically diverse group from India, came to this country about 20 years ago. And I have to say that I sometimes feel a bit ashamed, and I say this in a good way to everyone in the room, that a lot of migrants make it a point to understand about Aboriginal culture and history, because many of us come from ancient cultures too. But on my street, for example, with 25 wonderful families that I would count as someone I could give my key to, nobody knows anything about Aboriginal culture or language. And for example, today 3 people were supposed to come with me, but said it was too cold and didn't. Now I appreciate it is a cold night, but the point is, if these are easy excuses that many of us make, and I'm just wondering, how do we get the population, all of us want to help, that's why we're here in this room. How do we get communities to understand and learn? I've gone to Wollum Indigenous and Hillsville, and I've taken school kids and migrant groups. How do we get the community to join this momentum or this drive to understand and learn?
Yeah. That's a good question. There needs to be a very strong campaign to allow people to jump on board the campaign and come on and support it. But in relation to the long-term educating people about Aboriginal culture, Aboriginal language, that's only going to happen if we get it taught in schools. It has to be compulsory. It'd be really good if every kid got to learn about what does Boroondara mean?
Or Corunda.
Or Corunda. Yeah. What does welcome to country mean for us as Aboriginal people? What does acknowledging country mean? It'd be awesome if our kids, all our kids, together, learned that culture. And that's the only way you're going to get it done is through schools. More questions?
Thank you, Jill. I just wanted to make a comment, really. I've felt this NAIDOC week, I have never seen the amount of recognition of NAIDOC week as it has been on radio and television. And do you think this will help the campaign?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This year, we have in Melbourne every year an NAIDOC march, and that was last Friday. And we had 7,000 people turn up to the NAIDOC march, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. I've never seen that before, and that was the only march I ever missed. I was talking to an old friend of mine today, Terry Gallagher, who is the director of DELP, and he basically said he remembers the marches, the very early marches. There was him, Andrew Jacamos, and someone else who I can't quite remember, turned up to the march and they were the only 3. And that was back in the 70s, I think he said. Today we get 7,000. And that's awesome. And it's NAIDOC does highlight Aboriginal culture. It shouldn't just happen 1 week of the year, although this year it's been 2 weeks of the year. But it's been a great NAIDOC week, and the theme, I don't know who is responsible for that theme, but it's the best theme that I've heard for a long time. Because of her, we can. And I'm on social media, I'm on Facebook, and all the Aboriginal people posting Facebook photos of their grandmother or their mother or their sister or someone who's inspired them. And it's beautiful to see because of her we can. So NAIDOC does do a lot, but it's not enough.
Actually, I think we'll just take 2 more questions.
Thank you, Jill, for a most inspiring talk. And I think one of the things, the gift you've got is the wonderful sense of humour, which we've always experienced with our Aboriginal friends. And I've sensed that there is a spirit is moving in Australia. And our conviction is that Australia won't go forward until we face the past and the education comes into the schools, and we have become educated ourselves in the last months. And thank you.
Thank you.
Wish you every blessing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And I agree, I don't think we can move forward as a nation. And we are a nation, we're all one nation. You know, regardless of what Darren Hinch says. Yeah, we're stuck. And I believe treaty can unstick us. But it's got to happen at the Commonwealth level. And this Uluru Statement, that's the beginning.
Final question.
Okay. I probably don't need a microphone either. Jill, congratulations on your appointment. I remember you being, I think it was by John Fain, was it?
Yes.
Yes, and I followed this issue very closely, even though I'm not a member, but I should be. But I just would like to know a bit, and I don't know if this is not appropriate, but a bit more about yourself and how you got to be in this very important and illustrious. I mean, it's a huge, look, it's so moving for all of us. I'm having goosebumps as I'm talking about it, to reach this point for Victoria to have this treaty and show the way for other states. So are you able to share your background and how you got to this?
Thank you, I will.
Thank you.
I just didn't know whether you wanted to hear mine story, but I'm happy to share it. I'm one of 10 children. My mother had 10 children. 6 of her children were taken off her when they were little boys up in Far East Gippsland. I didn't grow up on my country, as I said earlier on. We grew up on Gallagher country because the only source of employment Aboriginal women my mum's age, or Aboriginal people my mum's age, could get was seasonal picking. You know, Aboriginal people weren't employed. But fruit picking, potato picking, onion picking. So I grew up all over Gippsland. I went to 19 different primary schools. 19 different primary schools. Until we eventually settled in Fitzroy, like most Aboriginal people in Victoria, came to Melbourne to look for work. Racism is alive and well, was then and still is, but it wasn't as blatant in the big city as it was in rural Victoria. So a lot of people came to Fitzroy, that's where a lot of us came to live. We moved to Fitzroy when I was about, I think I was about 10 years old, and went to Fitzroy George Street Primary School. That was my 19th school. Did you really? George Street? I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. I lived in Upney Dirty Street. Yeah. Anyway, George Street, Fitzroy, still there. And then I graduated to Fitzroy Girls, which is not there. And I didn't make year 7. I left. Well, they asked me to leave halfway through year 7 because I was non-compliant. Didn't like the teachers. I didn't like the history that they taught. So they actually asked me if they expelled me, in other words. Then I went to work in factories in Victoria. I worked in Roundtree Chocolate Factory and also a little gift card factory in Napier Street that's still there, near the high-rise flats. So my journey has been around that. Our brothers and our sisters who were taken away eventually came home when they turned 18, and they also settled in Melbourne and still live in Melbourne today. I've lost a few through cancer, and cancer is quite prevalent in my family. I've had I was diagnosed with a brain tumour back in 1997. Got through that and then diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer in 2009. And got through that. So I believe Bunjil's our creator, was looking after me. Not my time to die. So I'm still here. There's still unfinished business. That's what I believe. But then I got a traineeship under the Joe Kerner regime. Joe Kerner did a lot for Aboriginal people in the employment space, and there was a NISA scheme that was established, and I came into the public service under that scheme. And I worked in archaeology. I worked at the museum for about 3 years, learnt a lot there, and then secured a job with the Victorian Archaeological Survey. And my role was to build bridges between Aboriginal community and archaeologists. But it was a great time. I learned a lot about my own people, my own culture. There was some horrible stuff that I learned about too that wasn't so nice. There was a very early explorer. His name was George Murray Black. He was an amateur anthropologist, and he was commissioned by the Commonwealth Government to actually go all along the Murray River and dig up Aboriginal burials. He collected 1,600 Aboriginal skeletons and grave goods, and I was part of a process in relation. And Melbourne Uni owns 800 of those 1,600, and the ANU in Canberra held another 800 of the 1,600. So back then, the Aboriginal Legal Service, Jim Berg, who is a Gunditjmara elder today and still alive and still as crusty as ever, he worked for the Aboriginal Legal Service, and he took Melbourne University to court and won. So Melbourne University had to hand over 800 Aboriginal skeletons to the museum, and it was my role to unpack them, and that was a bit scary. ANU eventually handed over their 800 skeletons, and they're been returned for reburial. I worked there for 15 years in archaeology and the museum. I took leave when I got sick and resigned from the public service, because my role in the public service was to advise developers. You know how when it's going to be a big development, you have to actually do an impact statement on the flora and the fauna. I also had to advise on an impact statement on the Aboriginal cultural heritage values. And it was the year that Jeff Kennett came into office. And so, and do you remember when his plan was to build a 5-star resort down at Wilson's Prom? Shock horror. My role was to actually provide advice to his office to say, if you do this, Mr. Kennett, we don't want you to, but if you do it, please consider the Aboriginal heritage values down there. Because the whole prom is one big site. But my boss at the time in government told me to shred that advice, and I'm not to provide it to the Premier's office. So that's when I knew it was time for me to leave government. If I was not allowed to do my job, then it's time for me to leave. It turns out Kenneth didn't build that 5-star resort, by the way, which is good. Then I went in, I resigned from the State Public Service and had 12 months off due to health, and went in work in VACCHO, the Victorian Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, which is a peak body for Aboriginal health in the state of Victoria. And my job there, when I first started there, was, guess what? And it was an awesome job. I was heading up the sexual health team. So my role was to go out and develop and implement health awareness around sexual health and bloodborne viruses within the Aboriginal communities. But I ended up being CEO of VACCHO, and I ended up being there for 20 years until February this year, where I was appointed the Treaty Advancement Commissioner. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Sil. It's just been wonderful to hear you speak, and I know you're facing a formidable challenge, but it's such an exciting opportunity. Like Victoria could be leading the way and showing the federal government just how important this is. And so, you know, like with the LADOC theme, you know, if with Jill here leading this work, I'm sure we can. And we need to get behind her and spread the message. And thanks so much, Jill. It's just been a great privilege. I'd just like to present Jill with a small token of our appreciation. This was a book which our reconciliation group produced a few years back, and it's stories of Aboriginal connection in Boroondara, where Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal residents gave their stories, and we had two wonderful people to mentor us in this project. One was Auntie Frances Bond, who passed away a couple of years ago, wonderful lady, and Rocky Trigoni of the Korea Heritage Trust. So I'd like to present this to you.
Thank you very much.